Coming in at number 10, we have Hellgate Bridge. I mean, if you're gonna name your bridge Hellgate Bridge, you really are asking for trouble. In fairness, the bridge is named after the tidal strait it crosses in the East River, but still. Know what sounds like Hellgate? Fellgate. Rename that bridge. The bridge connects Queens to Randall's Island, and it is an on-brand red color. There are a number of urban legends connected to the bridge, including rumors of a killer lurking beneath its arches. However, the main legends here surround the ghost trains. According to local lore, the bridge is haunted by an old train whose passengers are the city's damned. Those who find themselves on the bridge at night report seeing strange lights thundering towards them before they disappear. Others report seeing old, battered trains floating over the river. The legend says that the carriages are filled with people who have lost their lives in the water. Now, these range from murder victims, people who have fallen short of the mafia, suicide jumpers, and historic Dutch explorers. They sit together on the weirdest train ride of all time. Coming in at number 9, we have the legend of Cropsey. Cropsey is Staten Island's very own boogeyman, but the legend coincides with some real-life terrifying stuff. Now, Cropsey was rumored to be a killer with a hook for a hand who had escaped from a mental institution and hunted children. Cropsey was said to live in an old abandoned asylum, the Willbrook Mental Institution. He would then come out late at night and steal children off the streets, torturing them with his hook. In other variants of the story, he would have a bloody axe. Whichever the way it was told, he was out there. Parents would use Cropsey to warn kids not to miss their curfews. Others would use him to tease one another at sleepovers. Sadly, the legend became mixed up in reality in the 1970s and 80s when Staten Island children really started to disappear. Andre Rand started working at the Willowbrook State School, a school for children with learning disabilities that turned out to actually be a very awful and unnurturing place for many reasons. Rand worked there and he abducted and murdered 5 children. He was finally caught in 1987 when a young girl with Down syndrome, Jennifer Schweiger, went missing. According to an acclaimed documentary on the subject, Rand may have been involved in Satanism and was possibly killing the children as ritual sacrifices. Coming into number 8, this city has 8 million rats. NYC dwellers will tell you that the population of rats will soon outnumber the population of people living in the 5 boroughs. Rats, of course, are terrifying for a good number of reasons. They're vermin, they're unclean, they spread disease. Hello, plague anyone? While there are a whole load of rats living in New York City, there's actually around 1 rat to every 4 dwellers, so around 2 million rats, which is a lot of rats, but not 8 million. There will only ever be one pizza rat though, so shout out to him. We could actually do a whole top 10 on the various legends of New York City rats. Some people even think that giant or mutant rats are running riot down there. Cool. Coming into number 7, we have the ghost ship of the Hudson River. The Hudson River separates New York and New Jersey and runs all the way from the ocean up to Albany. The river is an iconic part of New York City and has urban legends of its very own. One popular story is the legend of the Half Moon, the famous ship sailed by Henry Hudson, the namesake of the river. Hudson was lost at sea in 1611, although his ship is sometimes spotted sailing the famous river. One man named Samuel was fishing along the Hudson one evening before a storm when he saw a wooden ship with 3 empty masts. Samuel was confused as he had never seen a boat like this in his life, and he said it drifted 50 feet away from him before disappearing. It seems the legend goes that the half moon is only spotted when times are rough on the river. It serves as a warning for people to stay on dry land until the bad weather passes. Coming into number 6, we have the buried treasure of Liberty Island. Here be treasure and ghosts. Captain William Kidd was a Scottish pirate who sailed on many an adventure, but he was especially known for his illicit activity around New York City. The famous pirate was said to have stashed a boatload of bounty on Liberty Island, which in those days existed without its famous statue and was called Bedloe Island. After his death in 1701 for piracy, people started looking for Captain Kidd's loot. 2 soldiers, Gibbs and Carpenter, went to look for the treasure. They literally thought they'd struck gold when they came across a wooden chest. Before they could open it, they were set upon by what they described as a demon with black skin, horns, and wings. This evil apparition is said to guard the treasure to this day and still stalks Liberty Island at night. Wonder what Lady Libs feels about her neighbor. Coming into number 5, we have killer pennies off the Empire State Building. Ever heard the one about people throwing pennies or cents off the Empire State? With the momentum they pick up from being dropped at such a height, they can allegedly kill kill innocent people standing below. This is a very popular Manhattan urban legend and genuinely makes people nervous when walking around the base of the iconic building. This is just a scare story though. It's an urban legend. A penny's terminal velocity, the fastest it can fall through air, is 25 miles per hour. Now even when dropped at 1,250 feet, it wouldn't kill someone on the ground. It would hurt for sure, but it wouldn't kill. To be honest, there are so many safety precautions these days that it is very unlikely anyone would be able to launch a projectile off the top of the building. Coming into number 4, we have this secret bunker. I love me a tin hat conspiracy. Legend has it that there is 500 square acres of subterranean city 100 feet under Central Park. Theorists call this secret bunker the Manhattan Project, although I don't know if they know that that name was already taken. These theorists though do think that the secret project predates the atomic bomb, so maybe. To accompany the theory, there is a rather in-depth website that claims that the bunker was built in 1853 and there is still active use going on down there. The site shows picture evidence of the bunker and its clandestine entrances around the park. The site also claims that the bunker is the property of the US government and that both Tsar Nicholas, the overthrown king of Russia, and Adolf Hitler were rescued and lived out their lives there. Hitler under Central Park. Cool. Oh, did I say Tsar Nicholas and Hitler and forgot to mention the aliens? Right. Also, it seems that the Roswell aliens were supposed to have lived down there too. Cool. Sure. Keeping it in Central Park, we have the legend of the ice skating sisters at number 3. This urban legend dates back to a pair of siblings, the Van der Voot sisters, who lived with their overprotective wealthy father in his Manhattan townhouse in the 19th century. Their father, a widower, would rarely let his daughters leave the house, and when they did, they weren't allowed to go far. The furthest he would let them go out would be to ice skate on the 59th Street Pond, located at the southeast section of the park. They enjoyed this tiny slice of freedom so much. Now both siblings unfortunately died spinsters within months of each other in 1880. Around 35 years later, during the First World War, stories started circulating of the two sisters seen gliding over the 59th Street Pond. Now the sightings have occurred frequently ever since, and in all weather. The pond doesn't have to be frozen for this two to skate. The pair are seen in Victoria-era dresses, one wearing red and the other wearing purple. The sisters enjoy such fame as an urban legend that even the New York Times ran an article on them in 1997. Coming into number 2, we have John Lennon and the ghost of the Dakota Building. So just across the road from Central Park is the Dakota Building. It's a New York City landmark. Built in 1884, it was already shrouded in mystery and paranormal whisperings before providing the backdrop to John Lennon's murder in 1980. The former Beatle, of course, was shot outside the front steps by David Chapman. John lived in the building with Yoko Ono, who claims to have seen his ghost sitting in their apartment ever since. She isn't the only one who has seen his apparition either. In 1983, Joey Harrow and Amanda Moore saw him standing at the entrance looking pensive. It seems John is just one of a number of ghosts haunting the famous building. Lennon himself said that he saw a spirit of the crying lady. This is supposed to be the ghost of a former manager of the building. The Dakota is also said to be haunted by the ghost of a young blonde girl in a yellow taffeta dress. Residents of the building to this day still report a lot of strange goings on. Finally, coming into number 1, we have one of the most famous NYC urban legends. Behold the legend of the sewer alligators. In New York City, there has been a legend for decades upon decades that alligators exist in the sewer. The urban legend dates back to the 1930s and goes that wealthy people would bring baby gators back from their trips to Florida and the southeastern states. When the gators got too much for them, they'd simply flush them down the toilet and the snappy chappies would end up in the sewer, where they'd breed with other abandoned pets. In 1932, the New York Times reported an alligator spotted along the Bronx riverbank, and 3 years later, teenagers told news outlets that they saw one crawl out of the sewer. People still claim to see gators in New York City today, despite many refuting the claims. That being said, a 2-foot caiman was caught in Central Park in 2001, so the legend more than prevails. Coming in at number 10, we have the dinner ghost of the West Village. I love the Village in New York. Not only is it, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful parts of this city, it also has some of the nicest restaurants. I've never eaten at 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, see, but it is said to be a beautiful old carriage house dating back to 1767. The interior seems romantic, and at first glance, the scariest thing about this famed eatery seems to be the price of dinner, but things get a whole lot spookier. In fact, the old building is said to be haunted by not one, but 20 ghosts. When speaking to New York's Eater magazine, manager Roseanne Martino said that she'd seen a lot of ghostly activity, including picture frames tilting, flickering lights, and even plates flying off tables and smashing on the floor. She even said that some waiters have tried to take orders from guests sitting at tables only to find that there's nobody there. Some paranormal investigators believe that a few of the 20 ghosts are famous too. One ghost could be that of former Vice President Aaron Burr, and another a former Broadway starlet who likes a candle to be lit for her. Coming in at number 9, we have the Asylum of Roosevelt Island. If you've got a spare $4,000 to $5,000 American dollars a month to spend on rent, then you could be lucky enough to live in the Octagon building on Roosevelt Island. Not only would you need to be wealthy, you also need to be pretty fearless, as the former lunatic asylum is said to be haunted. The island itself is a stretch of land on the East River between Manhattan and Queens. It used to be known as Welfare Island because of the number of hospitals and institutions on the spit. The building was abandoned for nearly 50 years from 1955. That was until it was turned into apartments. Residents of the building have occasionally come across spectres, but it is widely reported that pets categorically do not like the stairs. Dogs will regularly stop and bark at seemingly nothing. Do you want to be stuck on an island with ghosts? No, I don't think you do. Do you want to hear more about Roosevelt Island? If so, good. If the haunted ex-asylum didn't warn me off sufficiently, I have to say the old smallpox hospital is the icing on the spooky cake at number 8. Once again, in the middle of the East River stands the Renwick Ruins, where over 30,000 people died of smallpox. I suppose it made sense to treat people with a disease as contagious as smallpox on an island away from the majority of the city. Despite the area of quarantine, think what the dying people must have thought as they were trapped overlooking the city, filled with people they loved but they just couldn't touch. These days, the former 18th century Gothic-looking hospital stands completely abandoned and in ruins. Spotlights light up the terrifying old building at night, making it look extra specially dramatic. Locals don't feel good about the place, with many reporting ghostly sightings. The building's rep hasn't been enhanced by popular culture either. In Marvel's Hellcat, the hospital is taken over by a witch and her evil minions. This is a quirky little urban legend at number 7. We have Manhattan was sawn in half. What a strange urban legend, I really like it. So it goes that out there in New York City, once upon a time, part of the island of Manhattan was sinking. The story was told in scholar Benjamin Botkin's 1976 book, New York City Folklore. He said that in 1823 or 24, a contractor by the name of Lozier noticed that the southern end of Manhattan was going to sink. The only remedy, it seems, was to saw the island completely in half, turn around the southern half and reattach it. Elaborate. Apparently all of the labourers of New York got involved in the project, turning up in their swaves to save the city. Only it turns out when they turned up for work, it was all an elaborate ruse by Lozier, who had disappeared. Why is this scary, Rebecca? 2 reasons really. Okay, so imagine if it was true and the only way to stop a city from sinking was to cut it in half and then reattach it backwards. I'd be worried. Also, imagine being convinced that the city was going to sink only to find out that it was all a cruel joke. You'd want to punch old Lozier, wouldn't you? What a card. Coming in at number 6, we have the Empire State Building being a car killer. Driving in New York City is scary enough, but in Manhattan, urban legend has it that the Empire State Building is a kind of Bermuda Triangle for cars. For some reason in 2008, it seems that cars started breaking down within a 5-block radius of the iconic 1930s landmark. We all know about Ford Mustangs on the observation deck of the Empire State, but has this car juju sent out weird vibes to jealous on-road vehicles? The New Yorker even wrote an article about the phenomenon in 2008, saying that cars' engines would simply die and their locks would malfunction, but when they were towed away from the building, they'd miraculously work again. The AAA breakdown service was saying it was happening happening to at least 4 cars a day. Speculation has it that the weird juju is actually coming from a giant cluster of antennas at the top of the building. Okay, next we're gonna have a little fun down on Coney Island at number 5. Legend has it you'll get stuck on the Coney Island cyclone. You may or may not live to tell the tale. Okay, not only may you get stuck, but you guys may also have to delete your footage of it. I love Coney Island. I went in 2016 and had all of the fun. In Coney Island's Luna Park, you can ride on one of the world's oldest roller coasters. This, honey, is still made from wood, which actually terrifies me on a whole new level. The 91-year-old roller coaster is an official New York City landmark and has only seen 3 deaths in the last 35 years, so, you know, semi-safe. That being said, it has garnered a reputation for being the most dangerous roller coaster in America. For me, riding an old roller coaster is scary because, I mean, it's old, wear and tear and all of that. Legend has it that if you ride this wooden dinosaur, there is a high chance you'll get stuck at the top. I didn't, but on Perez Hilton's website, he shared some snaps of some people that did. Terrifyingly, it seems that they had to walk down the tracks to safety. Worse still, there are rumors that the park will ask you to delete your footage if you capture a breakdown in action. Like, what is this? Nonetheless, I do still think it's worth a trip to Coney Island because it's really fun. Coming into number 4, we have the eerie legends of Grand Central's Whispering Wall. Grand Central is beautiful, isn't it? According to local legend, there is one part of Grand Central Station that you can stand in and hear a person whisper from the opposite side. It must be pretty spooky to stand in a place and hear a disembodied voice whispering beside you. Apparently the phenomenon occurs near the Oyster Bar and restaurant, and if you're standing under 4 archways in the lower concourse, you are able to whisper to people 10 meters away. They can be facing the opposite direction and still hear you. This actually makes for perfect spy chat. Apparently during construction in the station, something happened to disturb the acoustics, rendering the whispering walls defunct. Luckily though, now the construction's over, the whispering walls are back in action. Can you even imagine what has been whispered into these walls if walls could talk? I mean, I bet they'd have some juicy gossip. Coming into number 3, we have the headless ghost of Brooklyn Bridge. I think that Brooklyn Bridge is absolutely beautiful. The bridge that connects Dumbo in Brooklyn to the southern tip of Manhattan was built in 1870 and has seen its fair share of wanderers. Not only that, a number of construction workers died during building the bridge. There are a lot of urban legends when it comes to one of New York City's most iconic landmarks, not to even mention the Cold War bunker that was found on the site. The most prolific tale, however, is that of the headless ghost who wanders up and down the bridge at night. The headless figure is reported to be that of a worker who was decapitated in 1883 as a cable snapped and took his head with it. Concerningly, the bridge is also a popular suicide spot. Side note, when I was on Brooklyn Bridge a few years ago, I was alarmed to look up and see a lady with a huge snake standing there, like, get that snake off the bridge. Apparently, she's often there charging tourists for pictures, but really, I could live without a snake on a bridge picture. Coming in at number 2, we have the legend of Sid and Nancy and Room 100. New York has seen its fair share of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and often, we know how that ends. In 1978, New York was shocked and mystified by the death of Nancy Spungen, the girlfriend of punk rocker Sid Vicious. Sid was an English rock and roll star who rose to fame as the bassist of the Sex Pistols. Nancy was a groupie who became involved with the band and Sid after being expelled from the school and travelling to London. The young woman wasn't very well liked by the public as the media always crucified her. They portrayed her as being lewd and rude and outrageous, just like her boyfriend. When the Sex Pistols split in '78, the pair moved into Room 100 of Hotel Chelsea in New York, where they spent their days getting high. One October morning, Nancy was found dead with stab wounds in her stomach in the pair's bathroom in their hotel suite. Sid was arrested for her murder but died of a heroin overdose before he could stand trial. Who actually killed Nancy is up for debate, with many saying it was a botched robbery. Others speculated that she was killed by her dealer. Some even say that stand-up comic Rocket's Red Glare killed her. The case was closed but never solved, and a lot of people still wonder today. On top of that, many rock and roll tourists like to visit the Chelsea Hotel to see if they can feel the notorious couple's presence. Finally, coming into number 1, we have legends of the mole people. So in part 1, we talked about sewer alligators and crocodiles, but this time we are chatting mole people. When the New York City subway opened in 1904, stories of underground dwellers started circulating, but it wasn't until the 1990s that mole fever swept the city as first-hand accounts started becoming widespread. It seems that a lot of citizens think that there are communities of people living in the lost tunnels of the subway. There were a lot of rumors about these dwellers back in the day. Some say that they can see in the dark and that they speak their own language. Some even went as far as to say that the dwellers were cannibals, outcasts from society. So it turns out that there are people living down there, but very few people, and generally speaking, they're down on their luck, homeless people desperately trying to avoid being hit by trains. Nonetheless, that doesn't stop the people of New York City talking.